So I'm going to go ahead and write the four solutions for these for loops. So I'm going to make a new file, save it. I'll just call it for loops.html. And I'll just copy my setup from the while loops. So very similar. The only difference is I'm going to change the title to be for loops problem set. And then I'm going to change the script to be for loops.js. And then I'll make that file. So make a new file, save it, for loops.js. And inside of here, as I always like to do, just put something so that we can tell that our loops are connected. So now if we go ahead and open that up, it tells us connected. Okay, so the very first problem was to print all the numbers between -10 and 19. So I'm going to copy the while loop code that I have and move it over to for loops. And I'm actually going to make this split screen so that you can see both happening at the same time. So I have my while loop version on the left and then my for loop version on the right. So what I need to do is print all the numbers between -10 and 19. So for loop, I'm going to just do for I. Var I starts at -10. And we're going to keep running while I is less than 20. And then we're going to add 1 every time through the loop, console.log I, and that's it. So it's substantially shorter. We don't have to make a separate variable. We don't need a separate line to increment the variable. We can do it all at once up here. So let's just make sure that works. Back to the browser, refresh, open up the console, and we see -10 all the way to 19. So next up, printing all the even numbers between 10 and 40. So there's a few ways, again, we can do this. We can start, we need 4 either way. Start I equal to 10, and we want to keep going while I is less than or equal to 40. So I'm just going to add some spaces. Technically, it doesn't matter. I just like how it looks. And then every time through, we can either add 2, so I plus equals 2, and that's it, console.log I. And this is the first way of doing it. And just to demonstrate that, back here, refresh, and we get all the evens between 10 and 40. But again, the problem with this solution, it's the same problem we had with the first while loop solution. If instead I wanted to print the evens between 11 and 40, I'm going to have a problem. And that's because I'm just adding 2. And that's because I'm just blindly adding 2 no matter what the starting value is. So I'm getting the odd numbers this time. So if I wanted to refactor it to match the other version where we actually check if the number is even, it needs to look like this. I add 1 every time, and then I have an if statement, and I say if the number is even. So if I mod 2 equals 0, then we'll console.log I, just like that. And we shouldn't notice a difference if I refresh. Still works just the same. But this is the more foolproof way where I can change this to be an odd number and it still doesn't matter. Now it just prints the evens starting from 13 to 40. All right, the next one, printing all the odd numbers between 300 and 333. So we want another for loop. We'll start I equal to 300. We want to keep going while I is less than or equal to 333, and we'll just add 1 every time. And then what we'll do, just like we did up here, instead of checking if something is even, we'll check if it's odd. So it's very similar. If I mod 2 is not equal to 0, that means that it's odd. If it's not divisible by 2, then we'll console.log I. and save that, refresh, and we get all the odd numbers starting at 301 up to 333. So the very last one, printing all the numbers divisible by 5 and 3 that are between 5 and 50. So another for loop, we start our I equal to 5, we keep going while it's less than or equal to 50, and we add 1 at the end of every loop. Then what we're going to do is have our if statement check if I is divisible by 5. Then we're going to check if it's also divisible by 3. Like that. And then we console.log I. And that's it, we're done. So let's check it out. Refresh. And you can see we get 15, 30, and 45. So to recap here, on the left, I have the while loop solutions, and on the right, I have the for loop solutions. So I'll try and get them to match up as perfectly as possible. There we go. And you can see the for loop solutions are considerably shorter.